Hello, my name is Brianna Kaleen, and I am your host of the Suffering for Art podcast. Thanks for tuning in on this episode. I'm so happy to grow with you. I'm so happy to learn with you. If you enjoy your time here, please consider commenting, sharing, liking, subscribing, and donating to the podcast. You can do so with the link in the description box. And as always, stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks for being here. Have you ever sat down to create only to feel like your creativity has completely vanished? Like the door to your inspiration has slammed shut, leaving you staring at a blank page, a blank canvas, or an empty screen? You tell yourself, it'll come back tomorrow, as if some elusive creative fairy will swoop down and sprinkle you with inspiration like magic dust. But day after day, it doesn't happen. The spark you once relied on feels distant, like it's slipping further and further away. And with each passing day, frustration builds, not just because you miss the joy of creating, but because your art is also how you make a living. When the thing you love becomes a struggle to connect with, it's disheartening. But when that struggle affects your livelihood, when rent is due and the creative block won't budge, it turns into a pressing and a heavy burden. The thing about burnout, it's preventable. In today's episode, we'll explore why this happens, why your well of inspiration sometimes runs dry, how to refill it, and more importantly, how to prevent it. From understanding what creative burnout does to your brain to learning practical tools for recharging, this episode is all about reconnecting with the joy of creating. What's crazy is that coming up empty or hitting a block when trying to access creativity isn't just an isolated struggle, it's shockingly common. You may not even realize you've struggled with it. That sudden feeling of disappointment when you realize you haven't achieved what you set out to, or the emotional emptiness that creeps in after a long day of trying to create. Even cynical thoughts like, why bother? This will never be good enough anyway. These are all signs that you might be facing creative burnout. These feelings aren't just passing frustrations, they're your mind and body's way of waving a red flag saying something's off. Emotional exhaustion, cynical thinking, and the sense of being unproductive or stuck are some of the most common indicators of burnout, but burnout can look different for everybody. Some may feel physically drained, others emotionally numb, but the underlying issue is the same. You've been running on empty for too long. And here's the thing, it's way more common than you might think. Take, for example, Pirate. Pirate is a company that provides rehearsals and recording spaces for creatives, and they surveyed 1,500 DJs, band members, and dancers, and their findings. A staggering 66% of artists reported experience burnout at least once. That means if I put 100 artists in a room, 66 of those artists would say they are experiencing burnout, and honestly, that's likely an understatement. The truth is, burnout isn't just a creative's problem, it's a human problem. The World Health Organization, WHO, officially classified burnout as an occupational phenomenon in 2019. That was pre-pandemic. It happens in professional environments across the board. During the pandemic, a 2021 study found that 62% of physicians experienced burnout, highlighting a crisis in one of the most essential and demanding professions. In academia, research reveals that between 40 to 50% of college students experience symptoms of burnout, struggling to balance their workloads. And outside of formal studies, just think about anyone you know juggling multiple jobs, family responsibilities, personal goals. Burnout is everywhere. It doesn't discriminate. Whether you're a doctor working long shifts, a student cramming for finals, or an artist trying to meet deadlines, the root cause is often the same. High workloads paired with unrealistic expectations. And for creatives, that pressure is magnified by the nature of the work itself. Our art isn't just a job, it's often tied to our sense of identity and self-worth. So when burnout hits, it doesn't just feel like fatigue, it feels like losing a part of yourself. Let me circle back to something I just mentioned that doesn't get talked about enough. Creatives carry high workloads paired with unrealistic expectations. We've normalized this to the point where we barely even notice it anymore. But take a moment and really think about it. How many times have you been completely exhausted, yet you still dragged yourself out of bed at 5 a.m. just to sign your name up on an audition list? Or how often have you stared at a blinking cursor for hours, hoping for inspiration to strike, only to feel defeated when it doesn't? Or the times you sat through a 10-hour tech day, went into previews week where you did rehearsals and performances throughout the day. Maybe you've worked 3 jobs just to keep the light on, squeezing in auditions, gigs, or studio time whenever you could. Or maybe, and this is a side note, you're the person who doesn't feel like doing all those quote-unquote normal things, and you don't feel like you're grinding enough. Let me just say this. You can grind too little, and you can also grind too much. But the problem is we rarely stop to question where we should fall individually on that scale. We don't blink when these demands are placed on us because this is the expectation. This is the norm. It's the unspoken rule in the creative world. Hustle harder, push through, and sacrifice whatever it takes to make it. But here's my question to you. When will you rest? I know what you're thinking. Rest? Ain't nobody got time for that. And trust me, I used to say the same thing. I'd laugh and tell people, I'll rest when I'm dead, as if it were some kind of badge of honor. But deep down, I meant it. I genuinely believed I couldn't afford rest. At one point, I was working 3 jobs, auditioning, trying to write music, attempting to maintain a social life, eating healthy, taking care of my body, and keeping up with all the mundane, necessary things like cleaning dishes, doing laundry, paying bills. Rest? It didn't fit into the equation. I told myself it was worth it because I was chasing my goals. But here's what I learned the hard way. No goal is worth sacrificing your physical and mental health. No creative job, no dream, no once-in-a-lifetime opportunity is worth pushing yourself to the point where your body and mind are running on fumes. I had to stop using the I'll rest when I'm dead as an excuse to grind myself into the ground. Because here's the thing about burnout, it creeps up on you. I thought I was managing just fine. I was getting everything done on time. I was doing the things I said I wanted to do. But in reality, I was cynical all the time, and creating stopped feeling like a joy. It started feeling like a chore. My emotions were all over the place, and I couldn't find balance anywhere in my life. Why? Because my work-to-rest ratio was completely out of whack. A lot of people will brush burnout off as a feeling that you'll eventually sleep off. But it's more than just feeling tired. It's about losing the spark, the excitement, and the emotional connection of what you're doing. It's that hollow, disheartening sense that the joy and the meaning in what's found in your work has slipped away. It creeps up on you to where you can fully be functioning on fumes and you don't even realize it until it's too late. Or you might be trying to work but you can't get anywhere because your brain is just full. It's heavy. And here's the difficult truth. The longer you let burnout go unchecked, the harder it becomes to find your way back. And this is backed by science. Prolonged burnout causes changes in the brain that make recovery increasingly difficult. When your brain experiences chronic stress, it affects the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for focus, creativity, and emotional regulation. Over time, this stress rewires your brain, and it makes it hard to feel engaged with your work or tap into your creativity. Chronic stress puts your brain into survival mode, and that means it's going to start prioritizing basic functions like decision-making or self-preservation over deeper processes like imagination and inspiration or emotional connection. Even when you try to rest, the brain may struggle to return to its full creative potential because it's been stuck in the stressed out state for too long. Researchers call this phenomenon recovery inertia. It's like trying to accelerate a car that's been idling in the wrong gear for weeks. You don't just hit the gas and expect a smooth ride. And the effects of burnout can go even deeper over time. That emotional exhaustion can lead to symptoms of depression, hopelessness, disinterest, and a lack of motivation. And this creates a cycle where the very thing you love, your art, your craft, your passion, feels inaccessible, making it even harder to reconnect with creativity. The bottom line, burnout isn't just a phase you can push through or ignore. It's a warning sign from your brain and your body that something needs to change. And if left unchecked, it can take a significant toll on both your mental health and your creative identity. You might be thinking, okay, I don't feel that stressed, so why am I burned out? Here's the thing. Burnout doesn't just require chaos and high-pressure deadlines to set in. When you're creative for long periods of time, you're using up your mental, physical, and emotional energy, your creative battery. If you were using that battery sporadically, say for a big project once a month, you might feel recharged in between. But when you're tapping into your creative resources every single day, or even every other day without properly refueling, that's when you run into trouble. Even though creative work may feel second nature, it's actually one of the most energy-intensive activities for your brain. Think about it. Let's say you're writing a story. First, you have to decide what your main character looks like. That's decision making. Then you have to figure out the storyline or a plot twist, and that's problem solving. And as you build the world around the story, you're engaging in divergent thinking, the process of generating creative ideas by exploring multiple possibilities. It might not feel taxing, but a study in cognitive psychology found that writing a short story involves making, on average, 1 to 2 decisions per sentence. Think about that. Every word you choose, the emotional tone you set, the pacing, the plot, it all adds up. Depending on the length of your story, that's thousands of micro decisions, all powered by your prefrontal cortex. Now, consider how many decisions you have to make just for regular life. You can see how easy it is for your brain to become fatigued. And unlike physical exhaustion, mental fatigue doesn't stop us in our tracks. When you're working out and your legs give out after doing too many squats, you're forced to stop. But when your brain gets tired, you can keep pushing because bills need to be paid, deadlines need to be met, and you feel like you have no other choice. And let's say that prefrontal cortex, once you keep pushing, gets fatigued. That makes it harder to focus and make decisions, which puts even more stress on your body and your brain. And if you keep trying to perform at that same high creative level without rest, you're essentially running on empty every day. It's a cycle that just keeps going. Burnout at its core is a signal to stop. It's your brain and body saying, hold on, we need to recalibrate. So the question becomes, how do we manage creating often without falling into the burnout trap? You might have guessed it by now, but it's rest. Intentional rest, as simple as it sounds, is one of the best ways to help your brain recharge its battery. This isn't just about curling up in your favorite spot wrapped in the fluffiest blanket you own with the room set to an Arctic chill. If you don't like the room cold, you're weird. While that cozy scene is undeniably part of the allure, sleep is a powerhouse of restoration for your brain. It's when the real magic happens. Sleep, if you didn't know, has different stages and levels. There are 2 stages of sleep, the non-REM sleep and the REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement. You will alternate between these 2 main stages of sleep throughout the night. Once you have slept through the non-REM cycle and the REM sleep cycle, you've completed 1 full cycle of sleep. This typically takes 90 minutes. So you go through a lot of sleep cycles throughout the night. But within non-REM, one of the main stages of sleep, there are multiple different levels of sleep you can get to. So let's break that down. You may find yourself as you go to sleep in that weird in-between where you're kind of awake but very relaxed, and if a sound happens, you wake up immediately. That is when you're in your non-REM sleep. Eventually, you'll hit a deeper light sleep. I know, a very creative name, but essentially that's where your brain waves start to slow down as your brain prepares to go into deep sleep. Again, so creative. During deep sleep, your brain focuses on physical recovery and repair. Think of it as your brain's cleaning crew, clocking in for the night. This is when the lymphatic system kicks into high gear. It starts flushing out toxins and waste products that build up throughout the day, which means deep sleep is critical for your immune system, as well as consolidating memories, like filing away all that information and all the experiences you've encountered so that they're easy to retrieve later. All of these stages I just talked about make up the non-REM sleep stage. Now there's also the REM stage. This is a stage where your dreams live and creativity thrives. During the REM stage, your brain takes those neatly filed memories from your deep sleep stage and starts making connections between them. It's the aha factory, where seemingly random ideas combine to form those moments of inspiration that feel like they come out of nowhere. REM sleep also helps to regulate emotions, acting like a reset button for your mental state, so you wake up less stressed and better equipped to handle whatever creative challenges come your way. Now, one thing I can say that changed my sleep pattern was knowing that if I woke up groggy after getting a lot of sleep and having no reason to be tired right when I woke up, It was because I was awakened during the deep sleep phase. It's actually very hard to wake someone from a deep sleep phase, but I don't know, if you wake up, say, with a blaring alarm by your ear, you might wake up in a state of sleep inertia. And this typically means you'll be groggy and you won't know why because I slept long enough. Why am I groggy? It's because you woke up in the middle of your deep sleep phase. Because we know that when we go through these main two stages of sleep, the non-REM and the REM sleep, we hit 90 minutes typically on average. You can actually track when you'll be in your non-REM sleep and when you'll be in your REM sleep to figure out what the best time for you to wake up is. That's what I've been doing lately, and it's been a game changer for me. Anywho, back to why sleep is important. Skipping out on sleep is like refusing to recharge your phone but still expecting it to run all of your apps smoothly. Without enough sleep, especially those deep and REM cycles, your creativity fizzles, your mood dips, and even the simplest task can feel impossible. So while your bed might be cozy, it's also your brain's workshop, a place to repair, reorganize, and get ready to dream up your next big idea. You should be aiming for 7 to 10 hours of quality sleep each night. Women, you should be getting 8 to 10 hours. And yes, this is scientifically proven. Why no one has talked about this until recently? This is a man's world. I don't know. But you should be getting 8 to 10 hours if you're a woman, 7 to 8 on average for men. Sleep is the time your brain can essentially do the behind-the-scenes work that makes you function at your best. Now, I know what you're thinking. How am I supposed to pull that off if I'm wide awake at 2 a.m. scrolling on my phone or brainstorming my next idea? If you're a night owl, I get it. Actually, I don't. I'm a morning person, but I get it in theory. Falling asleep earlier feels impossible. But here's the thing. You don't need to completely overhaul your schedule overnight. You just need to implement good sleep hygiene. Sleep hygiene might sound like some weird clinical thing. All it means is creating habits in an environment that sets you up for better sleep. Simple stuff like sticking to a consistent bedtime, even on weekends, can make a huge difference. Your body's internal clock, its cardiac rhythm, loves predictability. When you go to bed and wake up at the same time, you're training your brain to know when it's time to wind down. Another game changer, cutting out screens at least an hour before bed. And I know it's hard. Scrolling through TikTok, Instagram, or squeezing in one last YouTube video feels so tempting. But the blue light from screens messes with your brain's productivity of melatonin, and that's the hormone that literally makes you sleepy. Also, your bed should be a sacred place for sleep and maybe a Netflix binge every now and then. And here's why. If you're consistently working, scrolling, or even eating in bed, your brain starts associating it with productivity or stimulation and not rest. It's like trying to relax in an office. It doesn't work. Keep your bed for sleep and you'll train your brain to see it as a cue to unwind when you're in it. And lastly, making your environment as comfortable as possible, cozy blankets, the perfect pillow, blackout curtains, or even a white noise machine if you're into that. These tweaks can help your body and mind feel even more ready to shut down. So yeah, aiming for that 7 to 10 hours isn't just about avoiding crankiness. It's about giving your brain what it needs to actually recover from the mental and emotional drain of burnout. Sleep isn't optional when you're trying to be creative. It's the foundation of everything. Another type of rest that's absolutely great for battling creative burnout are microbreaks. These are short, tiny, bite-sized breaks you sprinkle throughout your day to keep your brain from turning into a stressed-out potato. Seriously, microbreaks are like the brain's version of hitting pause during a long movie. It gives you a moment to reset so you're not totally fried by the time the credits roll. Here's the sciencey but still cool part. Micro breaks actually help combat decision fatigue, which is that exhausted feeling you get when you've made 900 tiny decisions by noon and now picking what to eat feels like solving quantum physics. A quick pause can restore your focus and stop your brain from spiraling into prolonged mental strain. It's like giving your brain a mini power nap, but without actually falling asleep and drooling on your keyboard. And guess what? These little breaks even lower your cortisol levels, aka the stress hormone that floods your body when you're overwhelmed. So when you're sitting there trying to figure out the next thing and you start feeling panicky, you start getting a little anxious, your brain feels like it can't think, that is your stress hormone kicking in. So even for just a couple of minutes to sit there, breathe, maybe stretch, or even just stare at a wall can tell your brain, hey, it's cool. We're not being chased by a bear right now. But wait, there's more. Micro breaks are also where your subconscious mind starts putting in the work. While you're stepping away, your brain is still simmering on the problem you were stuck on. And then, bam, suddenly you got a fresh idea or connection you didn't see before. It's like when you're trying to remember the name of that one actor and then it pops into your head later when you're brushing your teeth. That's an example of your subconscious working during a micro break. Sometimes when we get stuck on something, our first instinct is to think harder, when a really good thing to do is to step away for a second and let your brain do its work. So take the dang break. You're not slacking. You're working with your body and your brain instead of against it. Take 5 minutes every hour to stand up or stretch or just sit down and daydream. Think of micro breaks like a Snickers. Small, satisfying, and just what you need to get going without crashing. And no, that's not sponsored. All right, the last type of rest, and we're almost there, guys, we got to talk about is active rest. And trust me, it's cooler than it sounds. Active rest is all about doing low energy activities that don't require much brain power, but still help your mind and body hit the reset button. Think of stuff like taking a walk, doing some light yoga, or casually dancing around your room like nobody's watching, but maybe just close the blinds just in case. Here's why that works. When you're doing something mellow like walking, your brain taps into what's called the default mode network, or the DMN, if you're feeling fancy. This is the part of your brain that lights up during daydreaming and self-reflection. It's also the mastermind behind the aha moments. Like, you ever notice how your best ideas show up when you're showering on a walk? That's your DMN flexing its muscles. And active rest is how you feed it. Active rest is also like a stress assassin. Activities like walking outside, yes, you do have to leave your house, help lower stress hormones like cortisol and crank up your feel-good chemicals like serotonin and endorphins. So not only are you recharging your brain, but you're also hacking your mood. Who doesn't want to feel like a calmer, happier version of themselves? It starts with something as simple as going on a walk. So you'll want to spend 20 to 30 minutes a day doing something chill, doing some kind of active rest, whether that's walking in nature. If nature isn't your thing, maybe walking laps around your living room with a podcast on works. Pick an activity you actually enjoy and don't overthink. Maybe it's doing your nails at home, some light yoga, tending to your plants, knitting while binge watching your favorite show. The key here is to keep it simple. This isn't about hitting a new PR at the gym or organizing your closet by color. Active rest is like giving your brain a spa day. It's about doing just enough to let your body move and your mind wander. And hey, if that wandering leads you to your next big creative ideas, even better. Other types of rest, like vacations or sabbaticals, are also necessary when burnout has really drained your creative battery. These can help you change your perspective and help with decision fatigue. They allow for physical, emotional, and cognitive recovery. But at the end of the day, let's be real, this industry doesn't exactly roll out the red carpet for rest. It is a hustle culture. And when you feel like you're falling behind or watching everyone else turn out their next big thing, taking a break can feel like a luxury you can't afford. But here's the kicker. I'd argue that rest isn't just important, it's actually more important than grinding yourself to the ground or hitting your next big thing. Why? Because as we've just learned, rest isn't just downtime. It is the secret sauce that lets your brain process, recharge, and create those ideas. Rest is where the magic happens, the aha moments, the fresh perspectives, the creative breakthroughs. Thinking harder or working longer isn't the answer. Rest is. So, let me say this loud and clear. Rest needs to be non-negotiable. Rest needs to be non-negotiable. Build it into your schedule like it's as important as a meeting with your most important client, because it is. You don't need to rely on sheer willpower to remember to rest. God knows we've got enough on our plates as it is. So make it foolproof. Set reminders on your phone to take breaks. Block out time in your calendar for how long you will sleep, how early you go to bed, a walk outside. Make it to where it's an unmovable appointment. These little tweaks, taking micro breaks, sticking to a bedtime, stepping outside for 20 minutes a day, might seem like small, simple things, but trust me, they make a world of difference. They're the foundation of healing from creative burnout and keeping it from creeping back into your life. Rest isn't the enemy of productivity. It's the fuel for it. Let it work for you. Thanks for tuning in on this episode. I'm so happy to grow with you. I'm so happy to learn with you. If you enjoy your time here, please consider commenting, sharing, liking, subscribing, and donating to the podcast. You can do so with the link in the description box. And as always, stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks for being here.